Hey guys, Skellington80 here. So, today we are back with day 9 of 25 Days of Monsters, and before we begin, I don't think I showed you the illustration for Frankenstein's monster. I could just have a bad memory, but I'm going to show it to you anyway so it stops bugging me. Here we go. Here we see the monster in the laboratory. I'm assuming that's the table he was brought to life on. And he's sort of covered in the sheet, which Victor presumably covered him with while he wasn't working on him. And, so, yeah, with that out of the way, we can begin with today's story. Hang on. I need to steady the iPad. It's currently balanced on 2 DVD cases because I couldn't get the right angle with the TV tray alone. So with that being said, today we have the story of the Goblin Spider from Japanese Fairy Tales by Lafcadio Hearn, 1899. And this is a picture. I'm just going to warn you, for any arachnophobes, this is kind of freaky. I am arachnophobic myself, so I sympathize with you. Ready? 3, 2, 1, ta-da! Yep. Tim Sniper did not mess around with these illustrations. I tip my hat to you, sir. Although I doubt you're watching, but never mind. Okay, the category is shapeshifter. The base of operations is Japan, when, very ancient times, powers, webs, and also the shapeshifting, I guess. Most stats we need, eating humans like flies, and the fear factor is 3. Even though that is very relative from person to person, and I'll bet it's way higher for arachnophobic people. Alright. In Japan, very ancient books speak of haunted regions overrun by strange monsters and goblins known as yokai. There were many kinds of yokai in those days, such as the kappa, a turtle man with a concave skull filled with water that gave it special powers. Basically, if the water spills out, it loses the powers. It also apparently really likes cucumbers for some reason. And the kasa obake, I think there's an illustration of one in here. Yep, there's an illustration of one in here, so I'll show it to you later. A hopping one-eyed umbrella, and the most dreaded of all the yokai, the Goblin Spider, or Joragumo. When a regular spider lived for 400 years, it got promoted to Goblin Spider. Goblin spiders looked just like common spiders during the day, but at night they grew to monstrous proportions and did awful things. They had the magical power of taking human shapes so as to deceive people. Quick, before we go any further, here is the picture of the Kasa Obake. Kind of freaky, but you have to admit that's also really funny. You have to wonder what the people who wrote these stories were smoking while they were writing them. Okay. This was long ago, when every ruined building or forgotten grotto housed a yokai, and in some lonely part of the country there stood a haunted temple. The temple was abandoned, and for good reason. People who entered were never heard again, but people kept trying as they do. One day a samurai, famous for his courage and prudence, came looking for trouble. He entered the temple and hid under the altar. Strange creatures passed by, and a hideous goblin called out, "Haitokusai," which basically means, "there is a smell of man," I think. Hang on. Let's see, page 141. I'm sorry. Yep, I was right. I remembered correctly. But the samurai stayed hidden until he heard the beautiful sound of a samisen. I don't know if I pronounced that right. A Japanese instrument that looks like a banjo. And that's presumably what the spider on the illustration was playing. Probably. The samurai emerged from his hiding place and saw a priest playing the samisen. The music had an unearthly beauty, a haunting sound like no samisen samurai had ever heard before. Sorry. I got tongue-tied again. The priest welcomed the samurai and explained that he played music at night to keep off the goblins. He played for a while longer, then offered to let the samurai take a turn. The samurai was a suspicious man, but it seemed rude to decline. With his left hand, he reached for the samisen, and as soon as he touched it, it turned into a handful of webs. The priest cast off his human disguise and stood revealed as a goblin spider. The samurai tried to flee, but his hand was stuck in the monstrous spider web, so with his right hand he drew his sword and hacked at the spider as it closed in on him. The wounded spider crawled away, but the samurai could not follow, for the more he struggled, the more entangled he became in the webs. In the morning, the samurai's friends came looking for him and found him hanging in a snarl of cobwebs, weak but alive. They cut him loose and followed a trail of blood on the temple floor that led to a deserted garden nearby. From a hole in the wall came the moans of the spider. It too was weak but alive. They took their rakes and shovels and finished it off, of course. There was no mercy for goblin spiders in those ancient days. Alright, now we have Beyond the Book. Okay, this is a bit of a mouthful, so just, if any Japanese people are watching, please don't get mad at me. Hyaku Monogatari Kaidankai. In the Japanese story collection Tonoigusa by Ogita Ansei, 1660, several samurai are playing the old Japanese game of Hyaku Monogatari Kaidankai. Here's how to play. Gather some friends and light 100 candles in a dark room at night. Take turns telling ghost stories, and at the end of your story, blow out a candle. As the night goes on, the number of candles dwindles and the room gets darker and darker. After the 100th terrifying story, the room is pitch black, if you're brave enough to make it that far. In Tonoigusa, most of the samurai are, of course, terrified by the time the 99th candle is blown out. After the 100th tale, as the teller reaches to snuff out the candle, a gigantic shadowy hand is seen on the wall, and panic fills the room. But one samurai draws his sword and cuts asunder silken thread. The hand was actually the shadows cast by the legs of a spider as it lowered itself from the ceiling above the final candle. With its web cut, it fell into the flame. That's one less spider that will make it to 400 years old. Alright. Hearn. Lafcadio Hearn was an American newspaper reporter who took an assignment in Japan and decided to stay there, becoming a naturalized citizen. While teaching English and working for Japanese newspapers, he wrote many books and articles about Japan at a time, at the 19th century, when Japan was little known in the English-speaking world. Among his most popular works are several books of traditional Japanese folk tales, which he collected and translated. So while he did not technically write the story we just heard, he did, however, translate it. Hearn was also known for translating many French stories into English, including Gautier's The Mummy's Foot, and most of the works of Guy de Maupassant, although sadly not the Horla, which we will get to eventually. And let me tell you, it's pretty wild. Alright. Spiders at night. A spider seen anywhere at night, the people say, should be killed, for all spiders that show themselves after dark are goblins. While people are awake and watchful, such creatures make themselves small, but when everybody is fast asleep, they assume their true goblin shape and become monstrous. From In a Japanese Garden by Lafcadio Hearn, 1892. Other Japanese monsters. A folktale Hearn recorded from a Japanese peasant, published in his collection Kwaidan in 1904, speaks of the Yuki-onna, a snow woman who breathes on the faces of sleeping men in cold weather, her breath like a bright white smoke. This freezes them solid and incidentally kills them. What the story does not mention is she decided to fell in love with one of the men and decided to spare him, and they eventually got married. I think he saw her freezing his friends to death, and she agreed to not spare him as long as he didn't tell anyone. And after a while, he realized that she kind of looked familiar, so he told her about what the Yuki-onna had said to him, and, because he had technically told someone about it, she up and disappeared. So, yeah. Rakuro Kubi, also from Kwaidan, are human-looking monsters whose heads come off at night and fly around eating worms and insects and any unsuspecting people they find. But if anyone finds the body of the Rokurokubi and moves it, the head will never be able to join itself again to the neck. In fact, when the head comes back and finds that its body has been moved, it will strike itself upon the ground 3 times, bounding like a ball, and will pant in great fear and presently die. Quaidon also tells of a monster known as the Jikininki, or man-eating goblin. By the day, the Jikininki appears as a priest, but at night he reveals his true shape, which is dim and awful, vague and vast, and he eats corpses more quickly than a cat devours a rat. So yeah, Japanese mythology is wild as heck, and I love it. You should go read more Japanese mythology. We all should go read more Japanese mythology, because it is wild. It is like going on a drug trip, because it very rarely makes sense, and it's awesome. So, with that being said, I am sorry for any spider lovers who might have been offended by today's story. So, I don't know what else to say to you, but happy Halloween. Be sure to be back for tomorrow's story, and I will see you next time. Bye!